Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here at the Snowdon Deli AAD, along with Bill Brownstein of the Montreal Gazette and our special guest today. Welcome back, David Heurtel.
Great to be back.
Former Quebec Cabinet Minister and now political analyst. So this is the weekend. We will find out who succeeds. François Legault as leader of the CAQ, and obviously who becomes premier for a day or a week or a few months anyway.
A few months.
Up until the election. So there are a couple issues I thought maybe you could kind of step into here. Number one, beyond this race, which when Christine Frechette announced she was going to run, and I remember we talked about this at the time, it seemed like this was going to be a cakewalk.
Yeah.
It was more of an anointment than it was a race. And all of a sudden, Bernard Drinville, a couple of debates, did pretty good. All of a sudden, more people, in the Bernard Drinville camp. And then just a couple of days ago, all of a sudden, Simon Jolin Barrette, he has your support. What does this do for Drinville? Does this change, in your opinion, the outcome of this race, or is this still Christine Frechette's to lose?
I don't think it will change the outcome. I think we have to be very careful about these races in terms of what we see as the public and the general population and the pundits, and how Bernard Drinville has been very good at spinning the race, especially around the debates. But when you look at a race like that, and I've been involved in these types of races before, when you're looking at a government that is at the end of its rope and not a lot of members to go and get in terms of trying to sign up new members, there's not a lot of enthusiasm. This becomes, and from the very start, this was what I would call a caucus race, where it's who supports you in cabinet and in the caucus. So the ministers and the MNAs that support you. Why am I saying that? Because in terms of getting the vote out, okay, there are about just over 20,000 eligible members that can vote. And the vote started Tuesday. So how do you get those voters to the polls? It's the organization. So it's the writing offices. When you have just 75, 76 writings, and Christine Frechette has over 40 MNAs supporting her. That's staff, that's organization, that's members that are tied to those writing organizations. Same thing for ministers. The ministers, they have, on top of their writing office staff, they have their ministerial staff off. When they're off the clock, they're working for who? Christine Frechette. And that lead was very important. And on top of that, you have to add the fact that the money advantage was always Christine Frechette's. And finally, there have been polls that have showed that the CAQ would do better with Christine Frechette at the helm. But that has been brought down. That's still true today with the latest Léger. But it's gone way down, because the first poll in January, when she announced, she had the CAQ ahead of the Liberals. She had the CAQ in second place. Now, it's still in doldrums, but still ahead of Drinville. So if you're an MNA running again, or thinking about maybe running, you want to go with the one that gives you the best chance.
Sure. But a lot of people are now suggesting that all these Léger polls, are telling you what the public thinks on a certain level, but they say there has not been any real inside.
No, that's true.
Poll amongst
of course
the PQ CAQ supporters.
The polling, but still, my point about organization still stands.
Right.
My point about money still stands. And what the polls do tell you, you're going to want to dance with the one that has the best chance of getting you reelected.
But the other interesting factor is now they're saying with Jolin Barrette having put his support behind a little bit too late, because had he done, I'm sure they're very conscious of what they're saying and what they're doing. Why didn't he come out earlier? Because people are saying, had he shown this earlier, that perhaps this might have changed direction of the campaign. Then they're saying that, in fact, if he was running Jolin Barrette, he would have easily won the leadership.
Jolin Barrette is interesting on many fronts. First of all, Jolin Barrette was the most visible, most important member of that nationalist identity wing of the party. He looked at the race very closely and decided not to run. Why did he decide not to run? Because he felt he couldn't win. So that's very important to start off with.
Although he said it was family.
Yeah, and that there would be another chance. What other chance? I mean, this party right now, I checked just to make sure. I checked Philip J. Fournier's Quebec 125 site this morning. It's fascinating because in the projections, they give you a range of seats, right, that a party could win. Okay, they have a range in terms of the percentage of the vote and a range of the seats. The range of seats for the CAQ this morning is between 0 and 0.
Are you serious?
That's the range.
Even with
this is the range today. I've never seen that. Because before it was between 0 and 3 or 0 and 2.
Yeah.
But now it's between 0 and 0.
That's
so
wild.
but back to Jean Barrette. The interesting thing also about this is that it was interesting media. Yes, it was the day before the vote, and yes, he is a very visible member of the government. But first of all, he's not ultra popular within the caucus. He's not very popular within the cabinet. That's well known. But also, Bernard Drinville already established himself as a nationalist identity candidate. It's not like Jolin Barrette is going to bring throngs of new supporters to a candidate that's already established himself as the nationalist identity wing candidate. And it's not like Jolin Barrette has a vast organization throughout Quebec that will now bring, volunteers and bring out the vote and make phone calls. So,
but David, he's François Legault's chosen one.
No, he wasn't actually. That's interesting. He just before the race started, and in the year-end interviews, remember, when the question was asked to François Legault, the first name that he mentioned as a potential successor was Christine Fréchette. He said that.
Yeah, he did.
He was asked point blank,
Okay.
Qui est votre dauphin? Who is your successor? Who would you think? The first name, never brought up Jolin Barrette. He brought up Christine Fréchette. So I think with this race, I think, yes, Bernard Drinville showed a lot of weaknesses on Christine Fréchette's side. She did not perform well in the debates. She had difficulty answering very important questions on immigration. She also failed to establish her agenda, her economic development agenda. And on top of that, she failed to connect with Quebecers. Usually a race like that is an opportunity for you to bring up the party and to connect with Quebecers, especially with the looming election, on the major issues of the day. What are the top 3 issues? By far, every poll, affordability, now more than ever. 2, healthcare. 3, housing. Have you heard anything really substantial from Christine Fréchette on that? Even less on Bernard Drinville's side. But the fact is that the total of the race has brought down Christine Fréchette. There was some enthusiasm at the beginning. Maybe there's a Carney type vibe that she could develop, with a very thoughtful approach and the economic approach and her CV. But that didn't pan out. So now it's looking more like a Kim Campbell type situation more than anything else. And so and on top of that, what Bernard Drinville has done with his rhetoric, he's actually confused now voters, especially in the regions, who is the right-wing voice. And I think more and more now are thinking, well, I'm going to look at Éric Duhaime.
Right.
Because Bernard Drinville is basically sounding more and more like Éric Duhaime. And poll after poll after poll, and that's another thing that people will look at when they go vote. The unlikability of Bernard Drinville amongst Quebecers. It's incredible. I mean, there are only 2 politicians that are more unlikable in Quebec right now, according to the polls.
And who are they?
Than Bernard Drinville.
François Legault.
Pierre Poilievre, François Legault. That's it. And so, it's kind of fascinating to see. So all of that to say, you're right about the fact that we haven't had any real precise polling about those 20,500 voters that are going to choose the next premier of Quebec. But at the same time, when you add up all the criteria, organization, money, likability, potential for growth, even if it's not a lot, you got to think that Christine Fréchette has it.
Let me go back to what you just said, because I find this fascinating, right? If we're going to look at Francois Legault and a legacy here, and let's say you're one of those voters who is going to say, well, he started the party, he's taken us to this point, and therefore the person closest to him, despite the fact he said Christine Fréchette would have been his choice.
Well, he didn't say his choice. He didn't endorse her, but he did. The first name that popped up was Christine Fréchette.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is then this determination as to who you vote for? Is this, if you vote Bernard Drinville, you're basically voting PQ like? I mean, what does this do in terms of changing votes for people? Let's assume Bernard Drinville was to win.
Yes.
How does that change the landscape in terms of an eventual vote?
Well, that's very interesting because I've been thinking a lot about that actually. And when I look at the map and when I look at Bernard Drinville's rhetoric, I think, first of all, if Bernard Drinville wins, who knows? There could be a surprise. First of all, and I think that's one of the reasons why Simon Jolin Barrette backed him, is that I think Bernard Drinville will pull out all the stops to get his constitution passed before the end of the session in June. While Christine Fréchette has been highly non-committal and almost has distanced herself during the campaign from the Constitution. So I think...
Do you think that would have been involved in the discussion?
I'm convinced. I obviously don't know.
Okay.
I am convinced that for Drinville to do this the way he did it at the last minute, on the Monday before the vote starts, and bring out Jolin Barrette, who nobody thought he would come out and support anybody. I'm convinced that part of this whole deal is, if you get in, I get to ram through my constitution, because for Jolin Barrette, it's personal.
So
it's
he
obviously
must think
personal.
there's a chance, obviously.
Well, maybe. I mean, there's always a chance. I mean, we can't say. But the thing is that I have a feeling. My feeling it was part of the equation. But to your broader point, when I look at the map right now, and it's very interesting, the parallel I would draw, the current map looks a lot like 2012. Remember 2012, the 2012 election, the one that elected a minority government for Pauline Marois and the PQ. Obviously, the political circumstances are different, but the map is very interesting, where you have the PQ and the Liberals almost tied statistically. But because of the political map and the way the vote is spread out, the PQ is ahead, right? But it's pretty much you're in the same type of seat distribution.
Okay.
But the change is on that map, the third place, the voice of the conservative, the francophone conservative region's vote in 2012 was the CAQ, was François Legault, who was starting, to establish the CAQ as an option. Who's that voice right now? It's Éric Duhem.
Right.
Éric Duhem is in third place firmly, has that block of votes between, 12, 13, 15%. He's in there. He's very competitive. He's in second place in the Quebec City region. He's very competitive in the rest of Quebec, obviously not in the Montreal region, but it's very interesting. It looks kind of like 2012 in terms of the map, but just that shift. So Bernard Drinville winning, I think it brings the CQ even more down than it is, and it could help. It could actually help Duhem.
But does it bode well for the Liberals?
Here's the thing with the Liberals.
And Milliard being at all successful, reaching out to the region.
Well, the thing is with the Liberals, and Charles Midal's strategy of saying nothing about nothing is working very well. You got to give him that. But it's a strategy in itself. I mean, why get on the field right now while you have Paul Plamondon, who has been statement after statement after statement, showing a lot of arrogance and disconnection. You're seeing it in the polls. Not only is support for the PQ going down steadily, poll after poll after poll since the fall, but also you're seeing, I've been talking with you and others about Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon is developing a Pierre Poilievre problem. and more you're seeing in the poll. The last Leger showed, it's fascinating, support amongst women, Liberals are way ahead. What's keeping Plus Saint-Pierre-Plamondon higher in the polls is Francophone men. But with women, he has a huge gender gap. Huge. The women of all generations are not connecting. Also, the other problem is that, remember last summer there was a poll that came out, and all the nationalist media, Francophone media, did a whole thing about young voters are supporting the PQ. Remember, there was a whole hoopla about this. The last Leger, and this is consistent too, the Liberals are ahead with 18-34-year-olds.
Yeah.
And ahead with 55-year-olds and up.
Right. I think that poll was a bit of an outlier because
it was, but remember the whole here we go, it's 1976 again, and you know, it's all like here we go, and we're off to the races with the PQ. So the thing is, and the thing with the Liberals right now is that they're kind of, so it's working right now because the problems of the PQ, the economy, the uncertainty with the economy, which of course with what's happening with Iran and all that makes it even worse, is just de facto helping the Liberals because nobody wants to talk about a referendum. Nobody wants to listen to what Plus Saint-Pierre-Plamondon has to say. So by saying nothing, it's helping him. But he's plateauing. I think it is. I'll give you an example municipally. Can you name one really concrete driving commitment that Soraya Martinez made?
Clean up the city.
That's vague. I mean, there was a 10-point plan with general ideas. It wasn't like I'm gonna like Valerie Plante. I didn't see it. There were committees. There were
to homeless
groups
and fixing the homeless situation, building.
Yes, an issue that she has very little jurisdiction on.
Well, she can ask for more money from both the province and
for
from
more
the
money.
feds. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Ask for more money.
But,
that's a political platform.
I'm not sure that's necessarily fair. I think she's actually done a reasonably good job
it's not a
fulfilling
diss.
those.
I'm not trying to be unfair, Aaron. What I'm saying is, as a political strategy, she stayed very vague on her commitments. It's not a diss. It's saying
that's what Charles Milliard is doing.
That's what I'm saying to do. When you look at the 10-point plan, and a lot of political observers and commentators said that during the campaign, the municipal campaign, she put her finger on a lot of concrete issues that were preoccupations, but she didn't do like Valerie Plante 8 years ago saying, I'm going to build the pink line. She doesn't have that type of concrete issue that she said, I'm going to do this. Same thing with Mark Carney.
Yeah, but
Mark Carney didn't run on a specific issue. It works as a political strategy. So it's not being disrespectful. It's saying or attacking.
He also had it's
a strategy of staying general. But the thing is that his problem, Charles Milliard, is going to be about going towards the Francophone regional electorate and saying, okay, I'm going to own the issues of affordability, healthcare, and housing, and doing it in a way that is still, in a liberal way, defending Quebec's interests. He has yet to be able to define that. He doesn't have a brand yet. He does not have a brand.
How does Monsieur Fournier look at this? Like, what you were talking 0 to 0 for? What does he say about the Liberal chat?
Well, the liberals right now are firmly second, but they're not yet challenging the PQ for government. I mean, right now, where today, I mean, you have the PQ actually right on the majority number at 63 seats.
Oh, really?
But that could be a minority. It could be a higher number also, of course, but the Liberals are now hovering around 45, 47 seats, which is better than, obviously, the Dominique Anglade result of 2022. But it looks a lot like, again, 2012, when they got 50 seats and the PQ got 54. And a minority government actually is very, very helpful for the Liberals, because it gives, first of all, blocks PSPP's ambitions on a referendum, and it gives a shot at the Liberals of showing how incompetent potentially the PSPP's government would be.
You brought up an interesting point about PSPP and women voters. It was a similar situation federally, because the same thing, they say women are reluctant to vote for Poilievre on a certain level, and Carney really flew up unexpectedly. That sort of thing might happen to Milliard, in the same sense that not that they like him better, but they don't like.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, a lot, we saw it. We know last April's election, even sovereignists,
right,
voted for Carney's Liberals because they wanted to make sure that Poilievre could not, get to government. I mean, that was part of the calculus, especially in the regions across Quebec. But the thing is, it's the same thing. I think right now, when you look at women voters, but also younger voters and older voters, they're concerned about, again, it's about affordability, it's about healthcare, and it's about housing by far. I mean, identity, the polling shows that all the identity issues
way at the bottom
rank in single digits in terms of priorities for driving the vote, while the three issues I just mentioned are in the high 60s and even hit 70% in terms of priorities. So the uncertainty right now, the anxiety of everything that's going on with the economy and the world is definitely hurting what PSPP is trying to sell. And even look at the by-election Monday in Terrebonne. Have you heard? And Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon has campaigned there for the Bloc. The Bloc has thrown everything but the kitchen sink into that race. Have you heard anything about independence? They're talking about high-speed rail.
As well, yeah.
They're talking about high-speed rail. They're talking about the environment. Both PSVP and Yves-François Blanchet have mentioned sovereignty or independence or referendum a total of 0 times during the Terrebonne campaign. So that says a lot. Remember, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, after the whole Plaine d'Abraham fiasco or supposed scandal in January, remember what he said? He said, this is the kickoff of the referendum campaign. He said that in January of 2026.
And has never said it again.
He's never said it again. And not only that, he said, well, the referendum will probably be, in 29 or 30 when we win. So there's definitely these polls. I mean, with all of his bluster, his attitude, what was it, 2 weeks ago going on? I think it was Sébastien Beauvais, Radio-Canada, telling on, somebody from Gatineau wrote in a question and just saying, off the cuff, well, if you're a federal worker in Gatineau, you're going to lose your job. Yeah. You're done. Just let's move on. No sympathy, no compassion. No, we'll find you jobs or we'll train you for something else. No, you're done. A lot of criticism because of his, the farewell messages for François Legault, his last day in the National Assembly. Everybody said, really, you needed to try to score those types of points during that message, that moment. Well, everybody, André Fortin was super classy. Quebec Solidaire was super classy. Everybody was like, okay, let's put down, our swords here. Yeah. This is just, a tribute. The man has served for over 25 years, 8 years as premier. No, he went for the jugular again. So, and you could go all the way back, to last fall with everything that went on, actually attacking the cultural sector, Radio-Canada's newsroom, attacking the research sector. The whole, again, it's like Poilievre. It's that arrogance that is simply not connecting, especially with women, across the board. And you're seeing poll after poll after poll.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by the Snowdon Delicatessen, where we are. 75 years in business, the home of Montreal's greatest smoked meat, plus carnotzel, potato latkes, and the famous Snowdon Deli party sandwiches. That's the Snowdon Delicatessen. I love this idea that you just said now, where this liberal strategy, Charles Milliard, with the party strategy, and I will point out, Andre Pratt has gone back, right, to the
yes,
which is kind of a solid, I think, intervention for someone who's been around politics for a long time. And I think to myself, I remember at the beginning, we've had Charles Milliard on the podcast talking about, well, the economy, all the things you highlighted.
Generally.
Those are big, big ticket items without necessarily a lot of detail, but I know he's talked about cutting taxes on small and medium-sized businesses, all the things you'd expect to hear, but nothing really beyond that, and that's, I think, what you're alluding to now, that will stand out. But as you're saying, if this is strategy, why attack your opponent when your opponent's doing a pretty good job of attacking himself?
Why go on? Well, right now, I mean, the CAQ is imploding. CAQ is imploding, and what it shows, poll after poll, showing that it's those disgruntled liberals that are coming back to the party. So that's happening, and the thing is with the PQ, there's a lot of people saying, look, this is not the time. Even sovereignists are saying this is not the time.
Yeah.
So again, what I'm saying is, look, it's been done before. When Barack Obama, remember when Sarah Palin was named the vice presidential candidate of John McCain?
Yeah.
It was the excitement. It was the end of the world. The movie was titled Game Change.
Yeah, then she spoke.
And then for weeks, it just went down. She got a huge bump in the polls. McCain got a huge bump. And everybody was waiting for Obama to say something, for Obama's campaign to say something. David Plouffe, one of the most brilliant political minds of the last 50 years, who ran Obama's campaign, what did he say? Say nothing. Wait. And what did happen? She imploded on her own. If there'd been Democratic attacks, maybe it would have muddied the waters and whatnot. So I get the sense that right now, it's not necessarily time to get out there. And Chamillard, to be fair also, he has to rebuild an organization from scratch. He's busy right now because there are two major issues for him. Regardless of the polls, he needs an organization. I mean, this was true under Pablo Rodriguez. The party, there's like 60 to 80 writings where they don't even have enough members to form a writing association. They have to rebuild that. Maybe they're elsewhere today, but I remember during Pablo Rodriguez's time, it was 80 writings that didn't even have enough liberals to have a writing association. So and so you have to do that. And also the other big challenge for Chamillard, especially for the regions, finding candidates.
Yeah.
This is not an easy thing, trust me. And so he especially when you're looking at the polls, any poll in the regions right now has the liberals maybe third and a distant third. So it's not like, unless you're a fervent believer, and there are, but to have high profile candidates to say, you know what, I'm going to run in, I don't know, in Trois-Rivières, or I'm going to run in, in the Quebec City region.
Well, the one thing that's evident,
it's not an easy thing.
How many CAC members have since announced that they're not running again?
True.
And what does that tell you? So essentially what you're saying, be it for Drummondville, it won't matter in terms of the overall, unless somebody sparks somewhere.
When you look at a leadership campaign, usually you sense, look, for example, take Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre or Pablo Rodriguez. Take those three most recent examples of leadership races. A strong, robust leadership race develops the popularity of the winner, and is a springboard. Poilievre's leadership race, I mean, my goodness, he signed up hundreds of thousands of new members. He got the type of bump which he actually carried all the way through December of 2024, right? And he had like 20 points. That's when he started to his ascension. We forget today, but that's where it started. Mark Carney, same thing. When the leadership race, even though it was not competitive, solidified him as a complete change from Justin Trudeau and the anti-Poilievre. As Poilievre was trying to be the anti-Trudeau, now without Trudeau, Poilievre, obviously, as we know, completely lost the electorate. Same thing with Pablo Rodriguez. I mean, before Pablo Rodriguez won the Liberal leadership last June, the Liberals were 14, 15%, sometimes more, sometimes less. He got him up a week or two before the scandal broke He was
Very
at
close.
27.
Yeah.
I mean, right
2
now,
points behind.
he's
Yeah.
at 27, 2 points, 3 points behind. So he got a bump, and he was building. And let's be fair here. Chamayas benefited from that. But he's brought it back, obviously. And now they're better, but there are other reasons we've explained. But the thing is that Fréchette and Drainville have actually brought themselves down. They've shown the worst of the CQ. Instead of showing what the CQ could be, Drainville bogged down Fréchette. And Fréchette strategically made some mistakes because she let herself bog down. But first debate, what was the headline of the first debate? Quebec's third link. One of the most unpopular policies of the 8 years of the CQ government, which a lot of people would say started the downfall. So what did Drainville do? Bogged everybody around. Second debate, immigration. Again, a total loser for the CQ and not a priority. And all the economic drivers, all the economic lobbies are saying, we need more immigration. Even Jean-François Roberge is pressing the federal government to speed up the permits, the temporary workers permits for businesses in the regions. This is where we're at right now. And what does Drainville do? No, we have to cut immigration. And Fréchette wasn't able to get herself out of that and establish like a new strong agenda, the way, for example, a Carney did, or even a Poilievre did back in the day.
I want to ask one other thing that you, when you talked about earlier about Eric Duhem, who becomes the beneficiary here, right, of what we're seeing. When we get closer to this election in October, it seems to me it's going to become fairly obvious he will be attacked because he represents the conservatives, anti-vaxxers. We know all those issues from way back.
Those old attacks,
Is that going to come up again? Will that be something he'll be able to fend off?
It's really going to depend, I think, on who he recruits as candidates. I mean, that's going to be a challenge for him as well. Right? When you look at the by-elections, the last few by-elections in the regions, which the PQ did win, but in which Duhem's Conservative finished strong seconds in very different regions of Quebec. He had local, credible, serious candidates. He didn't have those outliers that we remember, before from the 22 campaign. And I hope, he paid his taxes and he paid his rents and everything, because remember that also made him, struggle back in 22. But the thing is that, look, Mark Carney just signed up a person that had some controversial opinions on COVID. So, and that seems okay now. And so I think Éric Duhem has obviously toned down his rhetoric, and he's offered different types of policies that are not, fringe, extreme, or radical. So, but again, his challenge is going to be, will he be able to recruit serious candidates? Remember, François Legault and the CQ didn't become a serious option for government until Geneviève Guilbeault won a by-election. We were in power back then. It was in 2017 when he recruited Geneviève Guilbeault, a charismatic former liberal who had made her mark during the horrible tragedy at Lac-Mégantic as one of the spokespersons. Yeah. And she won in a by-election Sam Ahmad's old liberal stronghold seat in Quebec City, Quebec. That win, because it showed that this was, okay, you can recruit, younger, charismatic people from elsewhere than the core, belief system of your party.
And it works.
And you can win in a riding that is not, again, in your core support. So that flipped everything back in 2017, and it made everybody say, now this is serious.
Well, do you see?
So until Duhem does that,
right?
Well, I was
in terms of recruiting candidates,
do you see a scenario where Duhem picks up strongly in the Quebec City area and Liberals here that they form some sort of coalition? Do you see that happening to stave off any kind of majority?
Well, right now, if look, right now with the seats, I mean, Philip J. Ford again has the Conservatives winning less than 10 seats.
Okay.
So right now
No.
it doesn't get you necessarily where you need to go in a minority government situation where the PQ would still win a plurality of seats. Regardless. But again, I mean, in a minority government situation, you've seen some strange bedfellows. I mean, back in the day, I mean, Gilles Duceppe made deals with almost everybody and Yves-François Blanchet made deals with everybody, and the NDP made deals with the Liberals, etc. So there's always possibilities there. But right now, I think the electorate, I mean, the vote is very divided. The electorate has yet to find, see again, we in Canada, before Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, I mean, the Canadian electorate was very divided as well. I mean, Justin Trudeau was in the 30s at its best. He was never over 40, right. Never over 40% support, either in Quebec or in the rest of the country. So the electorate was very divided. Now Canadians, and here in Quebec as well, you know, they feel they have a clear choice, and they, you know, right now they're going with Carney, big time, and then you have the Conservatives here in Quebec. It's more of the Bloc. So, but right now you don't have a leader in Quebec provincial politics that is building that type of grand coalition. That you know brings, you know, that 40 to 45% support. When we won in 2014, we won with 42% of the vote. So Philippe Couillard was able to bring, you know, that vast coalition of voters, regions, Anglophones, Allophones, Francophones, you know, brought everything together in a way that, you know, gave a strong majority.
David, we're going to have to wrap up. Yeah. You brought up something really interesting. I wonder, do you think, is there a Carney effect, or will there be a Carney effect in a provincial election? You talked about Terrebonne.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to note that a lot of the candidate posters that are up are also for Mark Carney, not for the candidate, right?
And he was out there touring.
He was yesterday. He was back there yesterday.
How much of that carries over, do you think, in a provincial election, right? I think he's one of the most popular politicians in the province. Obviously, he's not running. The most. What do you think?
Aaron, I think we have to say this very clearly, and this has been for many months now. The most popular politician in Quebec, all levels combined, is Mark Carney. By far. And I'm talking about Francophones. I mean, I'm talking about all voters in Quebec. By far, Mark Carney. So yes, there is definitely an impact. Here's the best example is the fact that Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon was in Terrebonne campaigning for the Bloc candidate. You're going to say, of course, last year, I don't know if you remember, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon wasn't even on speaking terms with Yves-François Blanchet during the federal election, the general. They were talking about poaching candidates and all this, and there was a lot of egos and all this and that. It was a lot of tension. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon going into what was considered, you know, 2 years ago as a very safe Bloc seat. And the week before an election, they threw Gilles Duceppe, they threw Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon. They are throwing everything but the kitchen sink into this by-election to try to show, because as to your point, the Terrebonne by-election has huge provincial impacts because it will be sort of a signal. It's not the end of the world either way, and there's 5 months left until the campaign starts, but it will definitely send a message about the strength of the independentist movement in Quebec as things stand versus a very popular federal prime minister that is connecting on real kitchen table issues and not getting what's one of the smartest things that Mark Carney has done and has been doing. He doesn't get into the traps of, you know, talking about the issue of separation. He doesn't make a lot of missteps. He doesn't detonate any bombs. You know, just imagine if nobody had spoken French to the astronaut. it would have been front page news. It would have been the diss of all disses. But he did. He was smart enough to do it, to speak in French, to make the thing, hey, we're speaking French in space. How great this is. And, you know, he announced Contrecoeur yesterday, you know, $1 billion plus project in Quebec. It's no fluke that he does that the Friday before the election. He goes to the Montreal Canadiens game. A guy from Edmonton wearing a Montreal Canadiens cap for Cole Caulfield's 50th and Slash 30th. I mean, come on.
Not bad for a guy who had no basis in politics, huh?
Right.
Doing
pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
He should run for the head of the Quebec Liberal.
Yeah. David, I thank you so much for coming.
Great talking to you guys, as always.
That wraps up another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast. We'll see you again soon.